And welcome to another draft physics presentation. Comments. So there was a comment on the Admindum channel, so I guess I'll deal with that. Yeah, I might as well go to the website reference, the Wikipedia page, on gravitational microlensing. So anyway, an Andres Hoffer. Why does an otherwise deep thinker, does this have to do with deep thinking, like Gary, dismiss the work of hundreds of scientist teams on gravitational lensing, like Ogle, O-G-L-E? I would ask you the reverse question. Why do so many of you people cling to fringe experiments of barely even theoretical truth value as hard science, as like evolution, like bones in the ground, like dinosaur legs? You think this is like dinosaur bone evidence? You think you're seeing the skeletons of the universe or something? No, this is barely the, it's like the meteor, with the microbe fossils in it. That could be made by like a million different chemical circumstances, chemical compounds. And the bonus was the microbes would be 1,000,000 times smaller than any microbe on Earth ever discovered. And still people, no, it's animal life, fossilized. I mean, there's so many examples of, taking a little tiny bit of evidence and expanding on it into a whole big theory. Now, all of this gravitational lensing talk, all is sort of dependent on Einstein just magically doubling the power of gravity. He just magically doubled it, by just saying, oh yeah, it's time dilation and light's going the speed of light, so the light is in the gravity, from the light's perspective, twice as long. And even that makes sense to you people. An idea that just like, well, what do you mean it's in there twice as long? And then they make all these phantasmagorical movies to verify your delusions. Like that stupid Interstellar thing where, somehow, they go onto the planet and the little guy is out in a spaceship and it's gonna take years for them to do something in just minutes. Minutes will be years for him. And well, they could have taken a camera with him and sent him videotape, right? And the videotape, he would see them moving really, really slowly, But that won't work because, yeah, the frequency of the signal will be all screwed up because of the time dilation. But wait a minute, there's a robot on the surface already that's sending radio signals, a radio beacon. Somehow that still worked. How come the beacon wasn't fucked up by the huge gravitational difference over just a tiny amount of space? I mean, you want to believe this much, go ahead. I can't stop you. But don't pretend that you're sitting here having a hard time figuring out why somebody who has been skeptical about all these traditional babbly stories, all this traditional notions about what the truth is of our existence, and I find physics has these phantasmagorical gods they've made out of nothing. They create whole... The Wikipedia page is littered with dark matter references. Things that just have no real scientific evidence defending them. I mean, shit. All right, anyway. Let's see. So what's the thing? Okay. The contribution of gravitational lensing, not only by dark matter, see? What, you got evidence that you lens something with dark matter? I don't think you have any evidence of that. Ogle was about lensing by stars in our galaxy. Yeah, well, and the whole principle of it is, if you read the Wikipedia page, I'll read some of it, it completely contradicts itself. They don't have to be emitting any radiation, but they can emit any form of radiation. Somehow we don't already know lenses work no matter what kind of light is being transmitted. Yeah, we already know that. I mean, just silly. It's written poorly. It's only a page long, and you call this science? All right. is very important. We found planets, etc. You say you found planets. You say these things. Do you really think that's what they did, huh? You have really hard evidence that that's what they did with lensing. I mean, you know, and again, scatter will create exactly the same effect as lensing under the right circumstances. So you don't even, it's bad enough that this is really thin science in the first place, trying to measure these subtle differences in the intensity of the light coming off of a star based on you know, changes in the light created by a planet going across it at hundreds of light years. That's already thin enough. But the idea that you don't even recognize the fact that if you're going to use a sun to do the lensing, you know, of some other object behind it, that the sun has a huge field of radiation around it that isn't lensing light, it's diffracting light. And that can create similar effects in the sense that light is bent. And it might have more of a chance because it could be bent by a better lens than the inverse square law. You just keep forgetting the inverse square law lens. Nowhere in the article does it say anything about how gravity doesn't make a very cool shaped lens. It makes a prism. You know, it doesn't make a lens. Alright. Okay. Is the purpose to stir up the believers of his viewers in modern physics? Is the purpose to stir up the beliefs? Is the purpose to stir up the beliefs of his viewers in modern physics? I don't even know what that means. Is he suggesting a conspiracy in physics? No, I'm suggesting the same thing I'm always suggesting. Humans are fucking assholes. And you will cling to any kind of bullshit to rationalize your silly fucking notions of reality. And you're just one of those silly fucktards who sits there and you want to believe in their special, fancy, interesting universe. You don't want to accept that, no, the evidence really points to a really dumb universe. But anyway, just so fucking pitiful. So let's read some of this mush. I mean, this science. Okay. Gravitational microlensing is an astronomical phenomenon due to the gravitational lens effect. So again, no acknowledgement that there's also something called scatter, okay, in atmospheres that also can create effects, illusionary effects, changing the intensity of light, like making the moon look gigantic, you know, at certain times of year. Yeah, it's like the moon's not really closer. You do know that, right? Alright. It can be used to detect objects that range from the mass of a planet to the mass of a star, regardless of the light they emit. So that one right there just sounds so insane. Regardless of the light that they emit. So what object you're talking about? The lensed object or the thing being lensed? So they're basically saying it doesn't really matter. In some cases we can see the lensing object, and in some cases we're seeing the object being lensed, but they didn't make that distinction. Typically astronomers can only detect bright objects that emit much light, stars, or large objects that block background light. So they're basically saying that we can only see something that blocks the light that comes from a star by creating a shadow over it, an eclipse, or we can only see something bright that has its light intensified and sent to Earth. I'll have to draw some of this, I think, just to make the point. These objects make only a minor portion of the mass of a galaxy. And let's understand, a galaxy's mass is spread out over a huge area. So the density of a galaxy is far lower than the density of, for example, the sun. Microlensing allows the study of objects that emit little or no light. So again, this is basically just saying the lensed, the object doing the lensing. If the object in the background Okay, it doesn't emit any light. You can't lens it. I mean, that's just truth. Sorry. So it has to be the foreground object. It's doing the lensing. Alright, when a distant star are... See, I mean, that's how badly written this is. It doesn't even make a distinction between foreground and background and make a clarification that the only time you can have see an object that isn't emitting light is when it's the foreground object. When a distant star or quasar gets significantly aligned with a massive, compact foreground object, the bending of light due to its gravitational field is discussed by Einstein in 1915. Yes, and Einstein discussed it again in 1934 and said pretty much it's a pile of shit. But anyway, let's just ignore that. Leads to two distorted, unresolved images. So now they're almost talking about an Einstein ring, except now they're talking about when an object bisects another object. So it just bisects it, and then you only get two objects. If it stays in the center, then you can get the ring. Let's see, distorted, unresolved images resulting in an observable magnification. The time scale of the transient brightening depends on the mass of the background object, as well as on, say, it's like the background object's mass matters. It really doesn't. The foreground mass is the only object that mass matters. As to the relative proper motion between the background source and the foreground lensed object. Anyway, just complete crap. So let's just look at one piece of the theory, and and we'll just be done with this again. I mean, this is, again, this criticism that I should be convinced by this incredibly marginal evidence. And people think that's being a reasonable person. Be convinced on tiny bits of evidence. Not big pieces of evidence, just little tiny, tiny pieces of evidence. So the theory of lensing is sort of like this. How did that end up in the middle of the page? Strange. Well, I'll move it down here then. I could turn the paper around, but that would be a pain in the ass. Anyway. Yeah, I did that without too much trouble. Okay, so here's your little object, and here's some lensing object in the foreground. Sort of the idea is the light off this object can expand, so to speak, like it goes out in a fan, and so it's enlarged here. Okay, and then this enlarged image, so this is the extra brightness they're talking about. So this is how you make an object brighter. You take an object here this size, and then you capture the light, so to speak, in a huge range, and then you focus that light back to a small little dot again. So then you're taking the amount of light collected, you're increasing the amount of light collected per square whatever. So instead of the object being this size, it's bigger than it is. So you're basically taking the eye view from this location where the object looks this big, and you're basically sending that view to this observer. And so that can result in what you could argue is magnification. But for this to work, this is the inverse square law here. This gravity is doing the 4 times half the distance, 4 times the strength. And so what mathematics leads you to this conclusion that you could retain any kind of image quality regarding the bending of this light to the proportions necessary? Well, first off, the light has to do this. It has to do the crossover thing for it to work at all. Okay. But there's no chance that the inverse square law creates the lens that's appropriate for this theory to work. But anyway, and there's plenty of other reasons to be critical. Again, light, you could argue that you could have a planet in a location. Why is this so far off? And that you have some other object, say over here, and it has an atmosphere or a field of ions around it or something. And you could argue that you could have a lensing effect like this, where you see this object as brighter because the other object's light is actually reflecting and adding to its brightness. So you can have circumstances where just refraction can create effects, and they make no distinction, like they know the difference between these things, because they don't. You could argue that, let's say an object was over here and kind of close to that sun, and you could argue that the light would hit that object, and that some of that light could bounce back off the object and reflect off, scatter back. And so in a sense your view would be of a brighter object, because you're seeing not only the light that, well, the light that comes to you is doing this. You're not only seeing that light, but you're also going to see the light that went this way reflected off the object and was reflected by the atmosphere. So it would add a little bit. But the idea that they are measuring these kinds of tiny differences over a year's period of tracking things, very little hope that they don't have all kinds of error code in their data, and they're making this up out of just the thinnest of margins. And and then I'm going to get ridiculed because I'm going to say you got to do a little better than that before you say you've proven anything at all. Evidence has got to be better than that. Alright, so back to the regular comments of idiots. Alright, I know that I'm an asshole, but I'm confused. Answer my question at. So this isn't his question. It was a question asked by a 6th grader. So it just lies, right? It's more frickin' lies. It's all you people got is lies, right? Do electrons have some volume, area, or shape? Now, that was kind of an ambiguous question. I'm surprised they even tolerated that, because you'd think they'd almost say, well, what are you talking about? Pick one of those. And so all the answers, if you go to the page, it's just full of, no, we don't, they're, without saying it, they just say, oh, yeah, this language is all wrong, because, see, we do this quantum mechanical thing, and stuff really isn't about what size it is. It's just about what probability there is that it's in a certain location on a certain day, and and they just obfuscate the question. So the thing I find interesting, I did change this, right? Yeah, I did. Is if you look at some videos from like the 40s, on electrodynamics, they often drew electrons really big. So the nucleus is kind of small, and electrons were gigantic. Because I think they were accounting for the fact that electrons seem to be pretty easy to hit. I mean, a lot easier to hit than the nucleus. And even Einstein thought, nucleuses, you can't hit a nucleus. You can't shoot neutrons into the nucleus of an atom. It's not possible, because he didn't think the nuclear bomb was possible. I mean, Einstein was, he wasn't right a few times in kind of dramatic ways. So as related to my whole conversation about electrons, again, I'm not stating that they have, I know what size they are, or how much of an area they consume of space inside of an atom. I am saying that I don't think they are moving. I don't think they are orbiting atoms. I think they're in rigid positions, and they're constantly moving in those rigid positions, like magnets would. They're shuddering in place. But when an electron is shared by two atoms, it's truly being shared. It doesn't go around one of the atoms and then go around the other atom. No, it's truly being shared. It's magnetically relevant to both, and it's locked in a position by the other electrons. And I don't think the atom could possibly stay together without that being true. So that's one thing I'll say. I mean, I can't prove it. I'll say that I think that's probably the way it goes. It probably makes more sense to me. And the argument that this just provokes is, again, this argument about they're all speculating about things we can't really know. We can't just take a magnifying glass and look at an electron. We can't shine light at one and create a shadow on the wall. We can't, there's a million things we can't do to know what electrons exactly are. We can't observe them the way we can observe larger objects. I mean, frankly, we can't even really observe atoms without creating a computer algorithm that does a lot of fudging, a lot of filling in. And let's admit, many of those images from the Hubble telescope are composite images, okay, and they're not really actual images. They've been refined by data processing to create an image, to create something to enhance, okay, through mathematical algorithmic modification, filters, to remove as much of what they think is noise as possible. And it's even a bigger problem when you're talking about looking at the very small things in the universe. So even having a conversation about it is usually going to be based on some sort of theoretical premise rather than an evidential premise, because there really can't be much evidence, because there's no place to source the evidence. There's no measuring tool for things that small. You can't capture them in one state, and even if you could, okay, you don't have the mechanism, the resolving power. Your microscope can't see things that small. All right. So enough. But you think this is the important subject? I don't even understand the point. I mean, I don't think you're really confused. You're just being obnoxious. So there's no but to your asshole comment. You are an asshole. Period. Alright, anyway. So, electrifying D. I don't know what that could mean. I may be wrong, but I understand the analogy like this. The magnetism is the coin. So this is the Ken Wheeler thing. So he says the magnetism is the coin. But again, my whole argument is the magnetism isn't described. You can't just keep saying it's the magnetism did it and say you understand magnetism. And all I have to say is, yeah, the magnetism does the magnetism. Yeah. I mean, that's really not saying I understand anything, is it? I mean, how is Ken Wheeler explaining what he understands by just saying magnetism makes magnetism? Oh yeah, when you combine it with a little bit of this dielectricity stuff. I don't get this. Anyway, I mean the coin has two sides, like the north and south pole of a dipole magnet. Yes, well, having two sides isn't explaining why there exist these phenomenons of attraction and repulsion. Why do the poles attract and why do common poles repel? Where's the explanation of the function of the magnet? I mean, if you're going to explain magnetism and yet you're not going to explain attraction and repulsion, how have you explained magnetism? I mean, it's the fundamental property. It's like explaining a car but not explaining movement. And the silver is the dielectricity. So again, it's somehow magnetism makes it possible. No, dielectricity somehow makes it possible for there to be poles, and somehow poles create magnetism. Fine, but that doesn't explain anything. It's completely unenlightening. It doesn't cast any light on the subject at all. I mean, the attractive, repulsive, magnetic effect is dielectric in nature. So how is that explaining anything? Heads and tails are silver in nature. Now I've explained the fact that on one there's a head and then the other is tail. How did the head get there and the tail get there, and how do the heads attract to each other, repel each other, and how the tail attract the heads? How does that work? Well, anyway, thanks for trying, but it just looks like more rationalizations. I'm just going to make excuses for the fact that he's not explaining a fucking thing. And you're just going to pretend that somehow he is. I won't read Michael's comments, but they're usually positive. Yes, I thought he'd use the Platonian logic. Yeah, okay, he's making fun. Alright, again with this electrifying. Do you know what a coaxial magnetron is? Do you know what a coaxial magnetron is? Ken Wheeler doesn't talk about coaxial magnetrons. He says light's like a coaxial cable. He's used those exact words. You know, the nodes are going this way and something else is going that way, kind of thing. It has space and counter space, you know, linings or something. No magnetron involved. Or a coaxial plasma waveguide. So he edited this comment because he had said some other crap before. I'm like, this is just crap. Oh, now he has a big pile of it. Oh, great. An analysis of the high frequency Elgin modes of a coaxial waveguide. Again, Ken Wheeler's use of the word was very explicit. So this is just bullshit. He didn't talk about any kind of coaxial waveguide, whatever that is, containing a magnetized annular plasma column is presented. Says you. This is all just jargon as far as, I mean, silly jargon. The transcendental, so that's a great physics word, equation, you know, it says that, right? Transcendental, yeah. Equation is derived for the binary conditions in the form of an 8th order determinant equated to 0. Alright, well, we're done. I mean, this is just too silly. The universe doesn't work that way. The universe doesn't work that way. Whatever you think this is, all this mush, I mean, I don't know why people cling to this. I mean, there was no point when, you know, I was in school, I was saying, oh yeah, give me some perturbation and hyperboloid and whatever that crap just was. Yeah, pile on the complex universe. No, I wanted the evolution story. I wanted the mechanically sensible, oh yeah, thermodynamics, that made sense. See, certain pieces of physics made a lot of sense. This crap doesn't make any sense. Magnets attract because of, you know, whatever that crap was, because of coaxial magnetroning in the, whatever it is, the transcendental, the polynormal equation. You know, fuck you. Alright, servicing IQ. I don't know what the hell that means. I don't, you know. Igor Quinn? I don't know. Actually, and pay attention. Well, you're getting deleted for that. Fuck you. A guy from Montreal will expose the topology of the moon. Something that's been staring at us for at least 23,000 years. Been doing that for a lot longer than that, retard. So Ezekiel, Plato, and others may have been visited. Alright, well, he's done anyway, you know. Fucking retard. These people are crazy. You people are fucking crazy. I mean, you're insanely stupid. Fragmented soul. Oh, what is all this crap? Okay, this video helped to understand your theory. How did the force and matter bits come to exist? It's not the fucking point. Nobody can answer those questions, and if they do give you an answer, they made it the fuck up. There's just not going to be blueprints. It's like asking... I mean, you could give vague answers to questions. You could sort of try to explain how sand on a beach is created and talk about the fact that, well, first the sand was formed into stones and then the stones are being agitated in the water and broken back into silica. I don't know. But it's just kind of, it's like saying, where did the first snowflake come from or something. It's just not going to be useful information. Even if somebody has the answer is not going to say, it's not going to scream to you, oh, that makes perfectly good sense. Because the universe is not obliged to make perfectly good sense in the sense of reasoning. It's just it could be simply just stated as error. There's an error. Period. That's it. The universe did a bunch of nothing for an eternity of nothing, counted by nothing, and then all of a sudden an error happened. Yes, and now all of a sudden they're counting how long the error takes to consume itself. Alright, how did the force and matter bits come to exist? How did they come to being? Again, so this has just nothing to do with anything called a rational container of where human beings can use tools, like magnifying glasses and stuff, and find answers. You want answers that we can't collect the evidence to answer those questions. It doesn't exist. It's kind of like the footprints of our ancestors. You're just not going to find them. They're washed away as time progresses. As the evolution takes place, you can't. And in the early universe, there wasn't even sand for there to be footprints. There's so many logical ways you can understand. You're not going to be able to see the origin. What made the force bits move? How it started moving. So again, I'm just amazing. I sit there and spend all these years making all these tedious arguments about all these details about physics and why I think the conventional model is under-evidenced and way ahead of the evidence cart. And you annoy me with this crap. You want a God answer of some kind. Well, sorry, I don't got it. What created matter? I am not trying to refer to any creator or anything like that. Well, what's the difference? I'm just curious. Well, I wouldn't mind an answer, but I pointed out, you don't really understand how those answers, you're not going to be able to just look out at the earth and say, I want to know about every creature that ever existed, because there's not going to be any fossils of some of the creatures. You'll never know they ever existed. And there's no way to find out if they existed. They didn't leave anything behind. You don't understand? That's sort of what the universe does. It doesn't leave anything behind. How did these things start doing what they are doing? Or have they just always done that? And how does any of that have anything to do with the subject of these videos? Which is, conventional theory says photons stay twice as long in gravity. It says photons break into two wave functions in randomly rolled dice, perfectly random dice or something. Lots of things physics says that I'm arguing with, and it has nothing to do with any of this crap. No beginning and no ending. Oh, he's just going to go on and on. Universe did not start. It always existed with force and matter bits. A lot of questions popped into my mind when I was watching this, but can't remember them now. Have to watch this again. I don't know why. None of my videos have anything to do with worrying about the origin of the functional bits. The Rube Goldberg machine exists. We're trying to describe what the Rube Goldberg machine does. Alright? That we can do. That's within our grasp. Finding out how the mechanism of action in the universe originated isn't part of a rational response to how does this thing we're living in and existing in that created our biological organism, how does it function? I don't yet agree with your ideas on how magnets work, what makes them repel and attract. Well, I don't know what other idea you think is better is the argument. What idea do you think is better than the idea I've presented? Conventional physics idea doesn't say a damn thing. It just says it's some sort of a magnetic force, and then some sort of electrical force happens. They provide absolutely no explanation for attraction and repulsion. Nothing. So, what are you clinging to? Hyperboloid swirly bits in space, and the swirls are so swirly in the ether that somehow the magnets are pulling into each other and creating a huge amount of turbulence that's flying all over space, but somehow we never detect any of that? I have to try to think about your theory more. At the moment, dielectric acceleration and creation of space makes much more sense to me. Okay, so I don't know. Dielectric acceleration makes sense to you. Those two words crammed together somehow make sense to you. So I could understand electron acceleration, I could understand a proton accelerating, I could understand an atom accelerating. What's a dielectric acceleration, by the way? Just curious as fuck. Alright, anyway, and the creation of space. Even Einstein didn't say that space creation was causing magnets to attract. So I guess that's a Ken Wheeler thing. Ken thinks that space creation is what's pushing magnets together, and pushing them apart as a bunch of space gets created between the magnets. Magical space creation. I thought he was a Teslaite. I thought he was opposed to space having properties. Anyway. Makes more sense to me what comes to how magnets works. Well, I don't know how it can make more sense to you. I don't know how you could diagram it or in any way make that mush rational or reasonable. But whatever. Nobody's rational or reasonable, clearly. Except for me. You have a lot of videos, suggestions. Why would I take suggestions from a dielectric accelerator? Anyway, you have a lot of videos. Maybe you want to rename this to My Theory Video 1. Well, I think it's pretty clear. It says start here on it. Fuck nut. Video number 1. Start here. You can't figure that out? If you can't figure out the title of the fucking video, then you're way too stupid to understand anything about physics. I mean, you're going to fall all over yourself on even simple words like fall. You won't even understand that. If you don't understand start fucking here, then yeah, you're not going to get any of this. It's all going to go way the fuck over your head. Anyway. He even says it. My Theory Video 1, start here. It's already on the video, retard. Or something like that, so that people know more of the content of the video. I don't know. You're just too fucking stupid. Do separate videos of force bits, matter bits, interactions, and so on. Well, that's what I just did. The second video was about the force and the matter bits. And it would be kind of stupid to talk about them separately, because as I point out in the video, they can't do anything without each other. Without each other, they do nothing. Force interacts with matter. Matter interacts with force. But there is no matter or force. So that people who want to revisit or ponder your theory can easily find what they want. I mean, they're numbered. 1, 2... There'll be a 3 and probably a 4. Fuck. My theory, force bits. I put bits right in the title again. It's just too stupid. Alright. Make the video short. Fuck you. It's physics, you fucking lunatic. You're going to explain phenomena that have been unexplained for the history of mankind in any rational terms in a 10-minute video. You think that's really practical, fuckhead? That I mean, it isn't really checkers. I mean, I'm saying that the basic universe's board is probably as simple as a checkerboard. The basic function is that simple. But obviously it's a checkerboard of such huge magnitude with so many fucking checkers on it that there can be piles of checker arrangements that look like Richard Nixon's head, for example, or look like a complex biological organism, for example. And you're really not going to be able to explain how the simple little function turns into those very complex things in a 10-minute fucking video. These are the stupidest fucking suggestions in the history of mankind. I suggest you think before you type. There, okay. Or so use anecdotes. I can't believe it. I use examples all the fucking time. The first video was full of the school of fish analogy. Oh, man. You're just too stupid. It's easier to follow that way. Okay, and use text like you used in this video. Yes, big giant words, because your people are too stupid. You know, you need it just said in block letters. Yes, make a playlist. Yes, that's what I'm going to do, but there's only 2 videos right at the moment, so I didn't find it an urgent necessity, but I figured I would be... That's why the videos have common titles, is so they can be put in playlists. You know, the Wheeler videos are all numbered. The videos on lensing are all numbered. For fuck's sake. Alright. Try to put your text camera and face camera on focus. I'm using Linux, okay? It doesn't let you fuck with the drivers for the peripherals. So you get what you get, shithead. Oh, man. Add soft face. Oh, fuck you. Just ceiling light. Fuck you. I mean, fuck you for thinking that I should waste my time worrying about these trivialities. You kook. Alright, so Prince Polka said, the question is what is, not how it all began, right? Maybe for you, I would like to know what came to be. And no, I don't believe in gods or any of that bullshit. But you clearly do seem to be horny for some sort of identity. Like somehow the universe is going to tell you mean something or something. Or there's some purpose to the universe's function. Like there was a purpose to evolution. Like, oh yeah, let's for 4 billion years create little mechanical, robotic, biological things that consume each other. Because ultimately, we'll create something that can sing and dance. And it'll be so special. But its poo will still stink, which will suck. Fuck. So a conversation between young Prince Polka and his dad. Dad, what is that? It's an atom, my son. What's an atom? Atom is matter made of electrons and protons. Cool, Dad. What do they do? They don't do anything. Yeah, they do a lot of things. That's the creation of magnetism. The electron and the proton are the magnetic monopoles and essentially create all of the functions in the universe. Anything that's doing something is likely doing it through the interactions between electrons and protons. They don't want to do anything unless fuckface comes to bother them. Fuckfaces. Wow, Dad, that's so cool, Dad. What is an electron and proton then, Dad? Well, again, they're just polarized. That means they have a character, a property, that's different from each other. And that difference is all the difference. One has a penis, one has a vagina. That kind of thing. They are the basic building blocks, my son. Everything is made of them. They are like Legos. Wow, Dad, awesome. I like to build things with Legos. Where do Legos come from, Dad? Huh. You can't figure that out on your own as a kid? I mean, as a kid, I know where they came from. And I really didn't worry about it in the first place, but you know, I knew there was a plastic factory somewhere in a machine that just went, you know, and made probably 1,000 of them at a time. Squirt and then dry. Anyway. Oh shit. Let's see. So where do Legos come from, Dad? Oh shit. Oh, shut the fuck up, son. We don't talk about that. Just play with your Legos, idiot. So again, no one's afraid to answer that question. No one's not answering this question because it's a secret and they don't want to let the secret out. No one's not answering the question because it's you know, they couldn't be bothered. They're not answering the question because there's no way to answer the question in anything called a logical or rational or evidence-based container. Dumbass. Beyond saying something like I've said, which is whatever the reason is, it's going to be a stupid reason. It's not going to be, oh, because it needed to. You know, like there was something, we have to fix something, so we have to create something to fix the nothing. The nothing's broken, we need to fix it. We need a key for the nothing. It's not going to be some, like there was a progression of steps and it needed to do this to complete some progression of steps. It's not going to be anything like that. The answer is just going to be a plain, stupid answer. It could happen. It happened. Alright, Mr. Pink Panties. It is simple physics and it is simple simply physics. It is just how Steinmetz started, got calculus and differentials and complex math in general out of the way first. And again, all of that crap, right? Some math is good, but obviously some of Steinmetz's math was complete rubbish. Some of his equations he never solved. No one ever solved because they're rubbish equations. But nobody in today's physics likes the results. What are the results? You can turn the entire problem of the explanation of the physical world into a math game theory problem and it will work out well. Prove it. I mean, you just say something crappy and stupid like that. Game theory. Which is retarded. I mean, game theory doesn't really have anything to do with logic at all. Force and matter are physical and do physically interact. Of course they do. Yeah, well, that's physics, asshole. And the point is people think they physically interact in all kinds of ways they haven't proven they interact, like photons being bent by gravity, and like photons being electromagnetic, and yet there's no evidence that a photon could give a shit about either electricity or magnetism. There is certainly a universal mechanism to regulate all bits. What would the universal mechanism be besides their own properties? That's like saying that humans are being universally regulated. No, they're robots made to specific design specifications, and they have certain properties and reflexes, and they will react in those reflexive ways. It is always a volume equation. That doesn't say anything either, just more mush. It is generally about the force bits, what they are doing. Yes, that's correct. You got that one right. If there's any action, the force caused it. Because the matter bits are essentially doing the opposite of moving. They're like motion sinks. They're capturing motion, and in a randomized field, that means they're capturing nothing, in the sense that their motion will be nowhere in a balanced field. Indeed, electrons and protons are the main players. They're the only players. There are no other players. Those nuclear bits make every other thing happen that happens. All the chemistry is completely dependent on what the electrons and the protons are doing. There's no other players. They're the only players. Them and the forces. No other players. There is a commerce mechanism within reflection and deflection. Whatever. There is no need to say the speed of light and force is better. And force is better. Right, the speed of force is better. Oh, I'm glad you agree. It is the peculiar combinations of the mass bits that create apparent material properties. Combination of the mass bits that create apparent material properties. Yes, then the combination of the mass bits is regulated by the amount of force between them. So it's really about how much force is between electrons, and those electrons will have a different property, different size, volume, arrangement, based on how much force they have captured. Right. Light bits are just a tiny part of what's going on, correct. The field is a derived effect, a mass effect, for want of a less confusing word. Yes, fields are always made of something. Field of corn, field of wheat, field of pumpkins. You might even say, although it's usually a flock, so you can't say that, but like a field of birds or something. But it would be better if we could say things like that. But yes, all fields have players in them, players on them. The field is not the empty field. The field is the players on the field. Yeah. A field is a derived effect, mass effect of one. Yes, gravity and electromagnetism can be duly married. Well, it's sort of like, it's kind of a perverse marriage. It's like clown and midget or something. It's they're derivatives of each other. One is the pure, one's the water, one's the piss. I don't know. One's this, I mean, clearly the magnetism is only because you're segregating the elements and making them therefore more, making their effect more, magnifying their effect, like the word magnetism, coincidentally. I mean, it's just a coincidence, but that's really what magnetism is a magnifying of the force effect by filtering it, by not having it yin-yang. It yins one way and it yangs in another way, and by separating the yin-yang, you make the yin and the yang stronger, because it's not fighting itself. Force or matter are nothing alone. Correct. Quantum entanglement is ridiculous. Yay. The anthropomorphism of the photon is ridiculous. Yes, the idea that they gave it battleship properties. It can read minds. It can split in two. It can hide from us. It can not have a location. It's ghostly. Woo! And conventional physics better starts with Newtonian single-slit experiment. Well, I'm just saying the phenomenon obviously was first recognized by Newton, and the Young experiment is just a modest complication. And frankly, in the terms that Young, in the crude terms that Young presented the experiment, it didn't even have the nuance of the two patterns superimposed on each other. So the only thing that really makes the two-slit interesting is the fact that two effects are merged into one, and that wasn't even what Young was pointing to as the phenomenon of interest. It was just the on-off pattern, which Newton had already discovered. So again, it's just really stupid to think Young discovered light interference, when clearly Newton's rings are light interference, if there was such a thing as interference. Obviously, it's not being caused by interference, but I'm just saying the pattern, the on-off pattern, was discovered by Newton. But the mind, the psyche itself, the game makers, the number speaker, the problem solver, the theory creator, is not the body. It is not physical, or whatever that means. Everything is physical in the sense that it's made of these indivisible hard particles, so to speak, is not a countless number of force bits or a multitude of mass bits, and is not a computer software. So you think the mind isn't a programmed device. You don't think it matters what country you grow up in, you'll be the same person. Doesn't matter who your father is, doesn't matter who your mother is, doesn't matter what kind of water you drink, doesn't matter what kind of food you eat, doesn't matter what kind of experiences you have, doesn't matter whether you're run over by a car, you're still the same person. Even if you're squished and your guts pop out of your mouth. Oh, I'm the same guy. Nothing changed. I mean, it's preposterous to think that you're doing anything not mechanical. Not cause and effect. Will and understanding, the two parts of all living minds. Desire and scheming. Understanding isn't what you people are doing. Alright. Are they to be given a small universe explanation? Yes. I'm sorry, cause and effect is a really good idea as a concept. It's really hard to defeat. That you can't have the effect without the causes. You can't play the piano without the knowledge existing, acquiring it. There's no I will my finger to be on fire. Can't do it. There's physical reasons why I can't do it. And then in the case of other things, it's I don't know how to do it. Juggle 400 things at once. Can't do it. Yeah. And there's a reason why I can't do it. The limitation is built out of the experience and the construction of the device. It's caused by the previous circumstances, where none of the previous circumstances created ability to do that. Oh, another universal expanse piece of shit. Well, we'll call this the last one. Alright. DraftScience, when will you ever cease with bullets, photons have passed through an object or medium, so-called slowing it down and then magically speed back up? So again, I've already explained them. They've been explained by other physicists in the world. So this idea that nobody's ever explained to you that photons don't slow down when they intersect atoms, that the photon as a bit of energy is absorbed, it's essentially spread across the atom and a new photon is released. But there's no loss of the energy, just as when photons always go inside of an atom. They never lose their energy. They're still moving the speed of light. They're just moving in traps. And I've clearly explained that idea of a trap. 4 right turns and you're stuck in there forever. You've never seen like a cul-de-sac? You know, there's cul-de-sacs that are made that way. You know, they have a little pass-through. So you can go in one side, go around, and you go around and around and around and around for the rest of your life. You can't understand that concept, so that the photon doesn't really ever slow down. It's just traveling in a bigger circle, or it's traveling this way in this circle, and then it goes into this circle, and then it goes into this circle, and then it flies out. You can't understand that as a concept, and that it never really slowed down. You can't? It's too much for you? Yes, it's too much for you. So there's no one has a theory, no physicist has a theory that photons magically speed back up. So, and if there is such a physicist, go argue with him, because clearly I've never said anything like that, and I've argued exactly an opposite theory. So why are you badgering me with a nonsense theory that has nothing to do with anything I've said is the truth, or anything I've said I agree with? It's a lie. You're just straw-manning the argument. You're pretending somebody's arguing that here, and no one's doing that. You're just a Ken Wheeler liar. Alright, when exiting the medium, so again, what medium would that be? You can call an atom a medium if you want. Maybe that's what you believe it is. But I don't believe the atom is a medium. Okay, it's a mechanism. And mechanisms can cause things to do lots of stuff inside the mechanism. Like a maze. Alright. Maybe you're suggesting, look, I don't suggest anything, I've overtly argued it. So, you know, you're right on the border of being blocked for this. To indicate that I've ever suggested something, when I've overtly stated what my theory is. There is little driver inside to operate the accelerator pedal. Yeah, so I'll fucking block you for that. Fuck you. I mean, that's just nonsense. Again, I've answered the question literally dozens of times on this channel. I've talked about photons and how it has nothing to do with photons slowing down. Lenses don't slow photons down. Okay, the photon is still moving the speed of light. It's just traveling a longer path. You think the lens is made out of empty space, even though it weighs more than lots of things in my house here. Certainly a piece of paper can block light. It doesn't weigh nearly as much as that lens. So you think the lens is made out of matter? And you think the light is somehow missing all the matter bits? No, it's hitting the matter bits. It's being absorbed by the matter bits. It's traveling through the atoms. And it takes longer to get through the atoms because it doesn't get to drive a straight path anymore. That too complicated for you, you fucking asshole? I find it quite novel that you think the ether doesn't exist, yet you don't mind Higgs field. Where did I ever argue the Higgs field is a thing? And so-called Higgs boson hype that's going around. So I haven't ever indicated I think Higgses exist, or that Higgses are real, or that any of these fucking atom smasher bullshit particles have anything to do with rational physics. They don't exist in any of the real world physics. They only exist in special circumstances where you blow atoms to bits. They're not a regular player on the field. They're dropping a bomb on the field and blowing the player's leg off and then holding up the leg and saying, Higgs boson! We found one! We found a guy's leg! I mean, that's retarded. And they think the leg is a real thing. Like, oh, yeah, let that leg go free. Born free, the leg will now go on its own, and it will have some kind of wonderful life in nature, living born free. You know, it's retarded. They're not real things. They're pieces of real things. Alright, if space's so-called vacuum exists, then the atmosphere, which comprise some of the sort of space with gas atoms and molecules floating in it, why not ether? Because there's no evidence of it. That's why, because of the fact that ether would be some kind of jello, and you'd have to account for why so much stuff just shoots through it without any obstruction whatsoever. And my second argument would be, is what's it made out of? What's the infrastructure? Why make it complicated? I have this, you know, it's like asking me why think it's push when pull is so much more complicated and almost impossible to be a rudimentary function. I mean, pull is impossible to be a rudimentary function. You can't make a rudimentary puller. A puller has to have grasping things. It has to have some sort of mechanism to pull. So there's no rudimentary pull. It's a complex function. An ether is a complex function. Why would the universe get more complicated? Cunt. I'll just delete it. Just push. Okay, go ahead. Push. And I'll push back, fucker. Because you're not on the subject. And again, it's just an insane lie to say I haven't explained photons before. And it's an insane lie to suggest I defend the Higgs boson as being a real player in the universe. Because I think that is so many layers deep in their fucking insane model. I don't even accept the existence of the stuff that's, you know, positrons or something. And the Higgs is even more ghostly. Alright, so that's enough. Fucking assholes. God, I hate you people. Anyway, so, enough. Hopefully the sound quality is okay. I'm trying a new mic. I have a new computer, but there's still some issues. The resolution of the camera should be a little better, and certainly the drawing camera should be a little better. But we'll see if I can get them a little better. So continue on the better road kind of thing. Thanks for watching and such.